Just how powerful and profitable is a paradigm shift? Well, for today's guest, it was life-changing, and you never know when, why, or how it's going to happen. You're about to hear the story of a man whose income disappeared overnight, and with a family counting on him, he didn't have a plan B. But he had the discipline and wisdom to put good ideas in his mind through a podcast and then a book, and they gave him the inspiration to take massive action. Discover how he went from employee to entrepreneur and investor and hasn't looked back. Powerful lessons we can all use to turn adversity into opportunity. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Main Street Capitalist Show. I am your host, Russell Gray, and I'm on location today in Mesa, Arizona, in the studios of Capitalist Pro. And we're going to get a chance to meet with the founder and CEO, Dallon Schultz, because he's got a fascinating story. So, Dallon, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, Russ. Looking forward to it.
So I think it's really important to tell the story about how we met, right? Because I didn't really know who you were. You were just this person out there, and I go walking by a booth at a trade show, and you're there. So tell that story.
Yeah, so that was a couple of years ago where I went up. I was like, Russ, you don't know who I am, but your efforts, your podcast had changed my life. So that was 2 years ago. So we're talking 2024, I think, is when that happened. But this actually goes all the way back to 2017, 2018. And 2017, I just graduated nursing school, became a registered nurse, working in the emergency room. And my goal and vision was always to become a nurse anesthetist. They're the ones that give you the anesthesia, put you under, make a few $100,000 a year, and then get into real estate. But a few months into that career, I broke my leg playing soccer. You can't work an emergency room floor with a broken leg. And I remember laying there in the hospital bed in the ER that I worked at with a broken leg, just wondering how I was going to take care of my family financially. And I knew that something had to change, because if something like this happened again, if something happened to me as a husband, as a father, I needed something that would take care of my family, even if I couldn't be for whatever reason. So that led me into starting to listen to real estate podcasts. So I opened up my iPhone, go to Apple Podcasts, type in real estate podcast, and Real Estate Guys Radio was the first one that came up. So I started listening to it. With a broken leg, I couldn't do anything. So I was just sitting in my recliner, just soaking it all in. And during that show, obviously you and Robert Helms co-hosted that together. I just caught the real estate bug. And during that, people kept talking about this purple book. Obviously, most people listening to this probably know what that is. And when somebody mentions something over and over again, you take note of it. So I ordered Rich Dad Poor Dad off Amazon. It was like $7, probably the best $7 I've ever spent in my entire life. Got that book, read it, something in my brain just clicked. And 2 weeks later, we bought our first fourplex without any of our own money. Okay, so now fast forward to a couple of years ago, that's what inspired me. When I saw you walk by, I was like, that's Russell Gray. And I saw you speak at Secrets to Successful Syndication. I saw you at some other events that you guys hosted, but I never had a chance to connect with you personally. So a couple of years ago, when I saw you walk by our booth that we were sponsoring, I just went right up and, Russ, you don't know me. My name's Dallon. You changed my life. And I shared with you in a brief moment what I just shared with our audience here.
Well, I got to say, just folks, if you're listening, a couple things. If you don't know, for 20 years, I was a co-host of the Real Estate Guys radio show with Robert Helms, and that was a ton of fun, and I met all kinds of amazing people. A couple of years ago, I decided that in order to do the things I felt like the Lord was calling me to do, I needed to make some changes. I did, and so I'm in the process of doing that, and I was in that section or in that season of my life when I met Dallon, and I can tell you, there's nothing more rewarding when you're out there living your life and you're putting yourself out there the way you do when you host a podcast and someone comes up and goes, hey, your content made a difference in my life. So if you're thinking about starting a podcast, let me know. Just send an email to feedback@russellgray.com and I would love to help you. I have a whole program I'm developing to help people because I think right now the secret to really changing the world is changing the way people think. Thoughts become actions, actions become results. Obviously, you had a situation where your thoughts began to change. You thought this was the path. This is the way I'm going to do it. And then reality is now all of a sudden I've got single point failure. If I go down, my whole plan unravels. I need to change the way I'm thinking, and I don't need to wait. I can go do real estate with what I have right now. So walk through that part of it, right? You've made this mental shift, started by listening to the show, the Real Estate Guys radio show, and then you decided from hearing that, I'm going to read the Rich Dad, Poor Dad book, and Kiyosaki, the master, good friend of mine, obviously flipped your thinking, and you realize that you don't want to trade time for dollars, right?
Yep.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Chapter 1, the rich don't work for money. And you decided, I need to build something that's going to pay me to own it. Well, getting that idea and putting it into action, those are two different things. So we're going to come talk about your entrepreneurial journey in a minute. But right now, you're still on a nurse. You probably have some type of disability or something, some type of income coming in. How did you actually find the deal? How did you put the deal together? Was your wife on board? Did she think you were crazy? How did all that go down?
Is the wife on board? I think that's the most important question that we got to answer there. Yeah, she was on board. Looking back, I definitely feel like there was some divine intervention, and just the series of things that led up to it. It led to this decision to take massive action that I felt like came out of nowhere. Like, looking back, I think that little flame of entrepreneurship and that desire to get into real estate had always kind of been burning, but it was that incident that I went through that allowed more oxygen and fuel to get poured onto it, which then erupted. So when I read that book, it shifted my mindset about putting time and energy into things that are going to produce income. And I grew up in a real estate home. My grandfather owned about 300 units of multifamily, and my father managed all of it. So I was already familiar with real estate. It made sense to me. I'm a very simple person. I like investing in things that I can see and touch. So when that thought hit my mind, again, the first thought was, you know what? We rented from this older lady when my wife and I first married. We rented a unit out of her fourplex 2 years prior. She's getting up there in age. Why don't I just give her a call? She might be interested in selling. I don't know. Like, that thought just came. So I gave her a call. Sharon, this is Dallon. Oh, Dallon, how are you doing? How's the wife? How's the kids? Said, great. We're thinking about getting into real estate. Out of curiosity, do you have any interest in selling your property? And she was like, you know what? We don't, but the guy next to me does. And in this area, in that small town we were at, there was 4 or 5 fourplexes, all the same floor plan, owned by different people. So I said, hey, would you mind making an intro? She did. I called that guy a couple minutes later. He's like, yeah, interested in selling. I'll do a seller carryback. We're selling it for $200,000, so $50,000 a door. This is in Eastern Arizona. And he's like, I'll carry $175,000. So you guys just need to put 25 down. I didn't have 25 down. So I call up my grandfather and I said, hey, we got this deal. We got this opportunity. It feels good. It just kind of fell into our lap. Is this something you'd be interested in partnering on? So he actually loaned the $25,000 we needed for the down payment. The seller carried $175,000. And then my brother-in-law, who I went into business with at the time, he was a contractor. We took it down and started remodeling it. And that's how we got into our first deal.
Wow. So no bank loan. You didn't have to worry about credit. You didn't have to worry about underwriting. And, a good friend of mine, Mark Victor Hansen, his wife, Crystal, wrote a book called Ask. And it sounds like that's what you did,
That's
right?
literally all I did. I literally just called her up and said, hey, are you interested in selling? It was that easy. And I was kicking myself. I was like, why did I wait so long? Now, with that, again, when I say divine intervention, timing, the way things lined up and the timing of all of it, I didn't have any control of that. What I did have control of was taking that action and making that call. So there were a lot of things that worked out in our favor, good timing, good luck, however you want to look at it. But we still took action, and it was simply just asking.
I think there's 2 parts. One is that you had, 3 parts. You had a bit of a vision about what the possibilities were because you'd seen it in your family. Number 2 is when you were faced with adversity, you chose to lean into learning. You could have easily played video games or, listened to music, but you chose to take that downtime to put good ideas in your head. A lot of young people don't understand how important important ideas are. We've got a grandson that just turned 18 years old, and for his birthday, I gave him a card, and what I gave him a little bit of money, but I gave him a Zig Ziglar quote book. And I talked to him about the importance of putting good ideas in your mind, because a lot of times we don't realize until much later in life that importance. And if we can start putting good ideas in our mind early, then those will turn into actions quicker, and those actions will turn into results sooner. Because once you started really feeding on good ideas, pretty soon actions followed, and then pretty soon after that, results followed.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the third thing is that you took the idea and you actually did take action. And it was simple action. You talked about being a simple man, and I think that's great. The simple thing was, I'm not going to try and figure it all out. I'm just going to go put the ball in play. I'm going to ask. I'm just going to pick up the phone. I mean, any chance you'd be interested? And wow, yeah, as a matter of fact, I am interested.
Yeah.
How about that? Okay, so now you have, you're this injured nurse. You now are in this real estate deal. You have done the rehab and you're beginning to get a taste of it. Wow, I can really do this. So your belief, I think that's also very important in your development, your belief. So talk about that transition of going from hope to belief, because I think a lot of people think they're the same. They're not the same.
Yeah, I like to think belief has action tied to it. Hope is something often starts as an idea, right? And it has to start there. But when you really start believing something, for me, when I can see the results of it, that's when my hope starts transitioning into a belief, because I lived it, I experienced it. And one hack that I learned early on is that I can start with that hope, and even if I haven't experienced the results, if I can identify somebody that I want to be like or I want to model and they experienced those results, it helps that hope start transitioning into belief, because now I can see somebody else that's done it. And I can't tell you how many times in my life I'll look at somebody and be like, okay, if they can do it, I can do it. And maybe that's part of my ego talking a little bit, but for me, it's how I really transition from taking that idea to actually getting the results or going into something that I know is going to improve our life or improve our future.
Yeah, I call that the Roger Bannister effect. I take it for granted that everybody knows the Roger Bannister story, but a lot of people don't. So for those who don't know, Roger Bannister was the first guy to run the 4-minute mile. Up until the time he did it, scientists said it was physically impossible for a human being to run a 4-minute mile, so nobody did it. Then one day, this guy who didn't realize it was impossible did the impossible, and then everybody saw him do it. And like you, they're like, well, if he can do it, I can do it. And like the very year that he did it, within 12 months, like, I don't know, more than a dozen people did it also. And so that speaks to this other part. Not only do you have to put good ideas in your mind, but you've got to put yourself in an environment with other people that are doing what you want to do, not just because of what you learn, but it's because of how it begins to shape your belief that you can do it too. So are you doing anything, as far as you said you attended Secrets of Successful Syndication? I'm guessing if you came to our seminar way back when, you probably went to others. But what role did going out in the real world and mixing with people who are active in real estate investing, which was what your chosen ambition was, what role did that play in developing further your confidence and then ultimately connections, relationships, access to resources, and all of those things?
It had literally had everything to do with it, because after we bought that first fourplex, a couple months later, we bought a second one. I was like, this is great. I'm going to be the fourplex king. And I always envisioned owning these big apartment buildings, but I always thought it was a rich guy or a rich trust fund out of Dubai, Los Angeles, New York. I didn't know that it was owned by normal people. And again, listening to the Real Estate Guys radio a few months after getting that second deal, there was a gentleman, Brad Sumrock, came on.
The Apartment King.
Yeah, the Apartment King. There's an ad that came up. I was like, I don't know who Brad Sumrock is, but he said Grant Cardone's coming to speak at this Apartment Investor Mastery Conference in Dallas. This was like 5 days before the conference. I called my brother-in-law. I was like, hey, I don't know anything about this guy or this group, but it's apartment investing. Let's get tickets and go. So we bought tickets, and then we drove like 14 hours to Dallas to see that. And at that event, that's where Brad Sumrock, that's where I was introduced to the idea of funds and syndications and how to take down these 100+ unit assets. And it wasn't him just speaking from the stage. I was talking to his students, the people in his group, and connecting with these people that have been in it for a couple years, and they're already managing a few hundred doors. And I'm like, this is it. And again, I found myself being like, hey, if they can do it, why can't I? And I remember driving home, that 14-hour drive back to Arizona, depressed because I felt trapped in my medical field job because I still had to take care of my family.
Took a lot of
Right.
time.
Yeah.
A lot of focus.
Took a lot of time, focus, and I have to provide for my family. And knowing that that's where I wanted to go, it clicked. Something shifted in my mind, and I said, okay, whatever I got to do in the next year and a half, 2 years, I gotta be out of this. I gotta be doing that full time. And so those events that I went to, again, opened me up to people that were already doing it. And I'm like, how have I gone my whole life and never even heard about this till I was 26, 27. I'm like, why wasn't I learning about this in my youth?
Well, that's Kiyosaki's whole complaint. He's like, why doesn't the educational system teach us about money? And why are there all these limitations that you have to go through this path? You have to go through these people. You have to use these particular vehicles. You literally syndicated your first deal, right? Owner carryback financing.
Which I didn't even know what owner carryback was at the time. He said, I'll carry 175,000. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what that means, but we'll figure it out.
I think that's awesome. So, okay, so you've discovered really the potential of syndication. Mm-hmm. And I think, to me, I've always believed, and for a dozen years, I've been teaching syndicators and teaching syndication because I really think it's the key. The fastest way to get where you want to go is to solve somebody else's problem and marry their capital to your opportunity.
Yeah.
And then you get a little condensation on the pipe. You make money. You make most of your money on the back end, or what they call the carry. And then you could begin to parlay what you make into either doing bigger deals with other investors and continuing to scale, or you can take the money you make for a season as a syndicator and then finally step back and say, well, I've got enough money now. I'm only going to invest in my own account. But you didn't continue on a path of being only an investor. You managed to eventually get yourself out of your day job. Was that because you were able to live off your investments? Had you gotten yourself to the place where you were able to live off your investments and then you started your business? Or did you say, well, I've got a little bit of a subsidy over here and that's enough. I'm going to bet on myself that I can make up the difference in my business. How did the transition from being an employee to starting a business, how did that happen for you?
Yeah, that was one of the toughest transitions I ever had to go through. And to answer your question, no, our real estate, our investments weren't producing enough to cover our income. And I know people will encourage that, and I don't disagree with it. But what I've also seen is that if people are waiting until that day happens, they are going to miss out on opportunities. And the universe has a way of keeping you in that comfortable position. And so for me, it got to a point where I literally felt like I had a foot in two different worlds, right? And you can't serve two masters, right? And I had the medical field and I had the real estate field. And the medical field, I knew I wanted to be done after I drove back from that Dallas conference. So I already didn't want to be there. I worked night shifts, so I'd medicate patients, get them down, and then I was on the computer underwriting deals and doing real estate stuff. And I feel like I've been out of work long enough now that hopefully that won't come back and bite me in the butt. But it got to a point where I realized my real estate couldn't progress until I could put more time, energy, and focus into it. Because as soon as I started feeling like I was getting momentum, I'd have to go work 4 to 6 night shifts in a row at the hospital. And sure, I'd have 10 days off, but trying to recover from that would often take a couple days. So I burned the boats. I decided to get my real estate license, and fortunately, that allowed some transactional residential commissions to come in from that. with my primary focus being on the larger syndication. So no, I didn't have the income from our real estate to replace it. It was a leap of faith, and I just decided it was time to bet on myself, and my wife was on board, and she's been very supportive all through this time with the ups and downs of entrepreneurship. But it wasn't until I decided to go all in that we started seeing more and more progress. And we did make a little bit of money from those first few deals that we made, but not enough for me to make that jump comfortably by any means.
So you now have made some investments. You've decided to walk away from the job. Did you already have the business you were going to started? Did you have an idea what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
Or did you just decide, hey, I need to get out of the day job and I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to focus on my real estate, and then the business came later. So did you have the business figured out? Did you leave the work to do the business, or did you leave work to do real estate and then move to the business?
Yeah, we weren't syndicating at this point. It was still my brother-in-law and I. We were doing some joint venture, still raising capital at a smaller level. But we got into our first major deal after I decided to leave the medical field, because again, shifting that focus, you start recognizing opportunities and you're able to start piecing deals together. So that business was existing because we still owned some of the real estate. But as far as the syndication and getting into the larger stuff, that came after the fact.
So your first business was raising capital. You were already a real estate investor. You started a business raising capital or syndicating to do bigger deals. And that was the first business. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I guess I'm uncertain of your definition of business.
Well, I'm telling you a lot, and I'll tell you, I told you I've been coaching syndicators a long, long time. And one of the biggest paradigm shifts, how you think affects how you behave, is they approach syndicating like it's getting a loan. They think of it as a funding mechanism. They think of it like, I'm going to go find a deal. I'm in the business of doing deals, and I'm either going to go get a loan or I'm going to raise equity, or I'm going to raise equity and get a loan. But the focus is on the deal and being in the business of doing deals. The guys that I've coached that have gone high level, like raised over $1 billion in capital, have realized, or the guys that have raised hundreds of millions of dollars, those guys understand that the syndication business is a business.
Yeah.
They run it like a business, and the deployment of capital is the business they're in. Like Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, Buffett doesn't run any of those companies. He doesn't operate any of them, right? All he does is raise capital and deploy it. His business is to raise capital and to underwrite deals. That's it. That's the core business. And I think a lot of people get into syndication and they don't, and they're busy, distracted with the job of managing the property, managing the rehab, managing whatever. And the challenge with that is that then the pipeline of capital begins to dry up, and what happens is they get a deal and then they're running around fire drill. You know, they don't have a well-stocked inventory of investors that are ready to fund whatever they find because they don't understand that's a business.
Yeah. And I think that's a realization that occurred after I left the medical field. So I thought I wanted to be the operator and the syndicator and do it all. And then after we launched a meetup here in Arizona, we became the largest monthly gathering for apartment investing in the state of Arizona. Robert Kiyosaki showed up a couple times, which was an incredible full circle moment because it was his book, through your podcast, that started all of this. But through that and creating our brand and building up our reputation, we got invited to participate in a co-GP setup situation with a couple other syndicators. And we were able to help oversee the underwriting due diligence and bring some of our network to participate into some of those deals as well. And so that didn't happen until after we went all in. So I left October 2019. It was the following year. It was probably about a year later is when we got invited to be a part of some of those deals. And that's really when we realized that the syndication business is a business in itself. And that led us to want to launch a fund. A fund had always made sense to me in my mind. And we launched that, the Rev Equity Fund, in October 2022. And we were in the business of partnering with good operators and then just building trust with investors to come into the fund and then deploy that capital into assets. So proud to say that we're still actually distributing through that fund. We're still making distributions, which in today's day and age, it's a lot of people lost capital or they completely ceased distributions. So we take pride in how we vetted those operators and how we place that capital. And through that, it also led us to realize that we had a terrible system for raising capital. And that's really what led us to Capitalist Pro. And this
so let's talk about that a little bit, because that's what always happens, right?
Yeah.
People, you're doing something and you realize there's a gap in the market. I need a tool, I need a service, I need a program, I need something, and it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
And so, or it doesn't exist in a good enough format. I think I can do it better. Obviously, you're there, you're managing people, you're managing relationships, you're having outreach, getting people on your list, nurturing, trying to figure out how to organize the data you have on them, index who has what and what they're interested in and when they're ready to act. Any syndicator understands how important it is to have a good database system. You obviously saw that and created that solution, which some people would say is a distraction from your core thing, right? You started out, hey, I'm going to be a real estate investor. Well, first you started out, hey, I'm going to be a nurse. I'm going to work up the ladder. I'm going to make a ton of money, and I'm going to invest my own money to invest in real estate. Break your leg. You're like, new plan. I'm single point failure. I can't depend on me. I need to find a way to go full time. You figured out a way to do that more or less, and then that brought you into the syndication side of things, and then you realized that isn't a funding mechanism. It's a business, and to have a business, it's got to have a good technology underpinning. The three trunks of a business the way I define a business, the root system being mission, vision, values, the trunk or the stump being the leadership team, which kind of upholds mission, vision, values, and then the three pillars that make up the trunk, which are legal, technology, and accounting. And you decided to hone in on this technology structure and tell us a little bit about how you realized that you needed it, and then what you've built, and then how it's shifted your focus and what your focus is today, because it's become a lot more entrepreneurial, even more so than it was when you were more focused on the syndication side of things.
Yeah. So the opportunity really presented itself. So co-founder Paul, he's actually running our equipment right now with Capitalist Pro. He and I started working together through the meetup that I launched. He reached out, we connected. We actually go back quite a few years, but we sat down. I remember it was at Joe's Farm Grill in Gilbert. Great place. And we had lunch, and he showed me what he had put together for this project management tool for another syndicator. And as soon as he showed it to me, my brain just clicked. I'm very visionary. I can recognize opportunities. And that skill set that Paul had made me realize on the real estate investment side that we needed more organization. We needed more structure. And so we brought him into the fund, and we started working together to work on our systems and processes there with what we had at that time. And then when we started raising capital, the experience, I remember it. This gentleman had committed $200,000, soft committed, like he was in, just sold his company to private equity. So, he's sitting on good money, had a really good relationship with Paul. And he's like, guys, I'm in, I got $200K. I got to do something with it. Just let me know when you have a deal. We're like, sweet. We put a check next to his name. And then we went out just vetting the deals, vetting the operators. And about 3 months went by, and we no contact with him because we were busy looking at deals. Got a deal, call him up. What do you think he said?
Yeah, the money's placed.
He's like, Dallon, Dallon, I wish you called me 2 weeks ago. I forgot we had that conversation, and I put it in another investment. So for us, that was a $200,000 mistake that really struck Paul and I like deep. Like because that's one that we were aware of. What's the capital we weren't aware of because we didn't have a good system or a good net to capture these conversations and these people that we had. So that's when we realized what we're doing is working, but it could be working so much better.
You got a lot of leakage.
A lot of leakage. We had this bucket that we were trying to contain all this water in, but there was holes punctured all over it. So that led Paul and I down this path of trying to figure out a better solution. And Paul, thinking very systematically and very process-driven, started researching, getting into all these different tools. And we stumbled across one. A lot of people are familiar with it. It's Go High Level. It's a good CRM, but it's a blank slate. There's literally nothing. I mean, you have the features, functionality, and that's it. So we stumbled into that. But again, as soon as he introduced it to me and the team, it's like, boom, we could see the vision. Like, we could see what it could become. So we took that, customized it for ourselves first. Because we thought at this time, we were the only ones with a terrible system. We had 4 or 5 different softwares, one for emailing, one for texting, one for project management. We're trying to have them communicate with each other. We had the same lead in 4 different systems with some notes here, some notes there. It was a complete cluster. So we cleaned up our system first, thinking we were the only ones that had that issue. And then just through our networking and conversations with people in the space, they're like, hey, can you do that for us? Like, we don't have anything like that. And it started transitioning into this, wait a sec, like, Paul and I together have this very strong ability to systematize things and work through it and simplify it in a way that other people could incorporate it into their business. And that's when it really started transitioning into what Capitalist Pro is today.
So talk a little bit about what it is. I mean, so that people really understand. If someone is out there and maybe they're like you were,
yeah,
they have gotten the real estate bug and the investment bug, and it doesn't just have to be real estate. I think there's a big opportunity to raise private capital right now to purchase small businesses. Over 40% of the small businesses are owned by baby boomers. Yeah. These things are not optimized for social media. They're not optimized for AI. You got what I call lazy owner syndrome. These are people who are kind of winding down and they're just getting ready either to hand it off to the kids or kind of sell it as is to somebody because they don't have the gumption or the willingness to put the investment in and take the risk to try to take it up to the next level. They'll get enough out of the sale as is. So I think there's a big opportunity there. But regardless of what people are raising capital for, this is a CRM, a customer relationship management system, but it's bigger than that from what I hear you saying, to help people effectively raise private capital to deploy however they choose to. And that's my basis of understanding. So you kind of enhance that and talk about the complete suite of what it is and really who it was designed to help and how it helps them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a great concept to bring up because we started in the real estate space because that's who we knew. But the reality is we realized that capital raising, it's not a money problem. It's a trust problem. And so what we started with, hey, we're the number one CRM for raising capital. A lot of people are like, what's a CRM? So we've even gone through some transitions and growth with Capitalist Pro. And the core aspect of it, again, it's not about raising money. It's about building trust. So we have this machine that helps people build trust on autopilot. And we do that through scheduling social media posts, right? People can we schedule up to 25, 30 posts a day, but we do it all at one time, right? So we're able to shorten the time of building awareness. Because if people don't know who you are, it's kind of hard for them to work with you. And once you get to a certain level of trust with people in your network, the deals you invest in become less important because people are investing in you and they trust you. So that's what we've built. We've built a system, and Capitalist Pro is the CRM is the engine that powers this system. So we help people do that through drip emails being top of mind. That $200,000 mistake, if he at least heard from us once a week through an automated drip sequence, maybe it would have been top of mind for him to reach out and say, hey, Dallon, where we at? This 200,000 is burning a hole in my pocket. Or with that system, with the right system, would it have notified us, hey, it's been 30 days since you've chatted with Russ. Why don't you give Russ a call and see what he's up to? So it's those things that weren't happening that we're now able to accomplish with this tool. And the whole point of it is to build trust. So it's through social media, it's through emails. We integrate webinars and workshops into that. And it's this flow that people can just drop people they connect with in, and they just work through this machine. And then either they naturally take that next step, or we're notified to give them a call based on how engaged they're at or where they're at in that trust timeline.
It's funny. I started my sales career, I hate to admit this, but in 1980. It's actually 1979.
Just a couple of years ago.
It was 1980. And the very first book that I read was called Organizing for Better Selling. And its thesis was that most salespeople are horribly unorganized, and that if you would just take a little bit of time and be organized, you would have a huge competitive edge. Well, I really took that to heart because I wasn't really the most social person. I really didn't have the best personality. I was a little shy, a little introverted, a little socially awkward. I'm young. I'm 20 years old. And what happened for me is by being really organized, by staying in touch, by following up, by following through, by being able to get back to people quickly with accurate information, I had a big competitive edge. And of course, there was no technology back then. It was index cards and ring binders and file folders.
An actual Rolodex.
And an actual Rolodex. And I used to carry around these big, giant briefcases full of information. But even though I was an outside sales guy driving around, I had everything at my fingertips, what today we would have in a cell phone.
Yeah.
Right. And so ironically, I still struggle with technology because I can't see it. It's not tactile. It's not visual the way I grew up learning. And as an older guy, sometimes I struggle with some of the tech. But for the younger generation, the opportunity to move at speed and really be organized and follow up and follow through, it's literally at your fingertips. The flip side of it is technology has created ADD, where people have very short attention spans. And so it's hard to be organized when you have a short attention span. And so if I could talk to a young entrepreneur out there, I'd say, number one, invest in technology that can help you be super organized, but then focus on developing what Elon Musk calls these 5-minute jam sessions. I literally have hourglasses I keep on my desk. And when I need to do a focused task, I pull out the hourglass. It might be a 5-minute glass. It might be a 30-minute glass. It might be an hour glass. I flip that thing over and I'm working on one thing on my to-do list. It means I don't look at my phone. I don't answer phone calls. I don't let the little beep go off and say I've got an email coming in. I don't look at my computer screen except to do the one thing I'm supposed to do. And I've found that I can get a lot of productivity in a short amount of time if I can bring my focus to be very intense and marry it to having the data I need at my fingertips. And that's what I think that Capitalist Pro and tools like that give people when they're properly set up.
It doesn't replace you from doing the work, right? It can make things more efficient, but at the end of the day, building trust, you have to have that human connection, right? So we're not here to automate that personal connection out of it. We're there to notify Russ, hey, Dallon's been in your system for 6 months. He's been clicking around. We've been tracking that. Here's his engagement score. Why don't you give Dallon a call, right? So now when you flip that hourglass over and you say, hey, I'm going to spend an hour following up with warm leads or engaged leads, you just click on that stage in your pipeline and you're like, okay, these are the 15 people I need to reach out today.
Right. It used to be, I'd say, okay, I'm going to spend X amount of time following up on people on my list. And I've got 3 hours budgeted to do it. And I spend 2 of them just getting the list together.
Yes.
Who am I going to call? And then I finally get on I make 3 phone calls and I'm done. And I haven't really accomplished as much as I could have. Okay, we could go on and on that. I think that's super interesting. So now, are you still raising capital? I presume you're still running your portfolio and now you're running the business. How do you juggle all that? Just and you got a family, a wife and children. Like, how do you balance all that? Because my mission, what I learned in life, my mission is purpose-driven, Main Street capitalism powered by balance. And when I was young, I didn't understand balance. I thought balance meant taking time off, unplugging, disengaging. And today I realize balance is kind of healthy tension. Like, I'm old enough to remember when you'd put the old antennas on your roof and you would have 3 wires pulling really hard against each other to hold that thing taut and straight. And if any one of them let go, it would fall over. And so there's a healthy tension I have found in balance, a level of intensity it takes to be balanced. So I'm not talking about like leisure time. I'm talking about being in the moment, pulling with all your might when you're with family, when you're working out, when you're working in any one of your different business ventures. How do you, that's how I deal with it. And I can't say I'm great at it, always working at it, but how do you deal with it? How do you manage all these different things?
This is an ongoing challenge. It's something that I'm constantly trying to improve.
Thank you for owning that, because it's I think every entrepreneur struggles with it.
Yeah.
Right? There's any success you've had, I think, will benefit the audience.
So one of the biggest things, and it was actually Paul was talking to a mentor of his, and a lot of entrepreneurs, we're all, whether we're officially diagnosed or undiagnosed, we all have ADHD. Okay. I'll say what it is. And so it's a gift. It's a gift. It's a blessing if you can manage and control it. So one of the challenges for me, I'm very futuristic thinking, right? So that can be good because it's like, hey, here's an opportunity. The other side of that is like, here's all the things that could go wrong. And our minds can't determine future anxiety from present anxiety,
yes.
Right? So there's a lot of that stress and pressure that I bring on and carry that I don't need to be, because that thing hasn't even happened yet.
And it might not.
And it may not. But that's one of the blessings and challenges with having ADHD. So one of the biggest pieces of advice, and Paul shared this with me because he heard it from his mentor, was one of their exercises they try to do daily is be where their feet are. So that means when I'm home. Like, turn off the phone, put on do not disturb, let the team know, like 4:00, I'm home. I'm dad mode. I'm husband mode. I do date nights every single Tuesday night with my wife. And on the business side, same thing. It's hard, especially when you're running a business. You got team members coming in with this and that and these questions, and it's easy to pull your distraction away. So Paul and I have actually told our team, hey, from this time to this time, we're not available. Figure it out.
I had a doorknob made when I worked in an office, and it said intense mode.
Yeah.
And when I put that doorknob on the outside of my desk, that meant I used to tell my kids when we were homeschooling them, unless the bone is sticking out of the flesh or there are flames at my door, do not disturb me.
I got to share this. It's cute. This literally just happened 2 days ago. I'm working from home because my wife had some stuff she had to take care of. And my 5-year-old son, I'm sitting there, I got my headphones in, I'm in the zone, I'm on the computer. And my kids know, like, when I'm on the computer, when I'm working, don't bother dad. And he comes up and he's like trying to get my attention. I take my headphones out. I'm like, what's going on, buddy? I got some work to do. He's like, I know, but I got something I got to tell you. I'm like, what is it? He's like, there was a mosquito flying around and I smacked it and it stuck to my hand. I was like, that's not important. Your bone's not sticking out of your flesh. But kids don't understand, right? So back to your question about balance, trying to be where my feet are has been one of the hardest things, but the most successful things, whether I'm at work on a certain task. I love your idea of the timer. I have a electronic one that I just turn the dial, set it for 30 minutes, hit the button, and then I like get in the zone. Now, in regards to the fund, we looked at about 6 deals last year to bring into it. And at the start of the year, nothing fit our buy box, nothing fit our criteria, and we were still distributing capital. So we actually decided to stop. Even though we didn't fully fund, we we're letting that ride because those deals are operating. If we bring in one bad deal, it could hurt the entire portfolio.
Yeah.
So we're letting that ride. And one of our business partners, Jim, absolutely incredible. He's overseeing that. So since we're not actively raising and sourcing deals, that's just coasting right now. It's minimal effort. And that allowed Paul and I, it was probably about 9 to 12 months ago, we were at this point where like, okay, Capitalist Pro has been growing and gaining traction. The fund has been growing, but we had a foot in two different worlds. So again, we found ourselves in this spot at this flexion point of where do we see the opportunity? Where could we gain the most momentum? And since the fund was in a good, healthy spot and we had a team member overseeing it, we had an open conversation, and that allowed Paul and I to go 100% into Capitalist Pro. So we're still overseeing that, updates with the GPs, but that's minimal, right? That's a few hours a month, and that's allowed us to put the time and energy to be where our feet are, which is right now it's Capitalist Pro. And we've helped over 200 people in the industry get their systems working and dialed in. And it's been really neat just to be that partner to these people and just bringing our energy, our thought process, our superpowers into their businesses and help them elevate even more.
Well, I think I really wanted to focus in this interview on your journey because I knew a little bit about it. You filled in a lot of the pieces, but there's a lot of people out there that are working a day job. Maybe they're on a path where I can earn some money, save some money, make some investments to someday get out of the rat race. Maybe they actually like the work that they're doing, which is a bonus. A lot of people are doing work they don't like. They don't see a path. They don't see a future. And you have described the process of evolution, in terms of how you put good ideas in your head. You got around people. You raised your belief level by seeing other people do it. You took action. You had to make strategic decisions about what to let go of and where to focus. Sometimes you make those decisions and you look back and you're like, that was a great decision. Sometimes you make those decisions and you look back and go, I blew it, right? But it's all good. You're either going to get the opportunity or get the blessing, or you're going to get
part of the
lesson.
journey.
You're going to get the lesson, right? Nobody bats 1,000. So I think it's all been very good. Hopefully people listen to this interview. They took notes. They can think about it, apply it to their own life. If people want to learn more about you, what you're doing, do they follow you on social media? What's the best way for them to engage with you?
Yeah, we're going to be putting out a ton of content on YouTube. We're in our studio here. And we brought on a team to help pump that out. So we're doing 3 videos a week on YouTube, and along with a bunch of shorts, nuggets, tips, tricks for building trust on autopilot. And there's going to be concepts and then insights into our tool. So YouTube, if you're looking for video content, and then LinkedIn, those are the 2 places to really locate us because that's where we're the most active.
Okay. Well, Dallon Schultz, thank you so much for being on the show. Ladies and gentlemen, Dallon Schultz, Capitalist Pro. Check him out. We'll see you on the next episode.
Awesome. Appreciate it, Russ.
Thank you.